Now, ransomware group with links to Russia has been accused of being behind a cyber attack on the Royal Mail. The company has been unable to send anything overseas since Wednesday. Reports say ransomware from a gang called Lockbit has infected Royal Mail computers used to print customs labels. Well, with me now is Brewer, cybersecurity expert and chief revenue officer of SimSpace. Great to see you. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Tell us a bit more about Lockbit. Who are they? What do they do?
Well, it's interesting. It's always very hard to tell with these organisations. Supposedly, they've got links to Russia. They did a blog on that. One of their group did a blog on that last year. However, one of their members has been picked up in Canada, who's facing a 5-year jail sentence. And not only that, some of their software was leaked. So the chances are this might not actually be the group themselves. They have actually said that it's not them, but again, that doesn't mean anything. But they've lost control of some of their software, so this could be another group using it. Or they also provide their software as a service. So it could be somebody who's paying them to use that ransomware component.
Interesting, isn't it? And they're obviously very sophisticated, aren't they? Because they're attacking, well, you're smiling at me, maybe they're not that sophisticated, but to be able to bring down the Royal Mail in this way, they know what they're doing.
Well, 71% of UK organisations faced ransomware last year. 13% of them unfortunately paid the ransom. There's about 500 million ransomware attacks a year, every 10 seconds. And unfortunately, it's a lot easier than people realise. There's been an underinvestment in critical national infrastructure in the UK, and we've got a digital hygiene problem. It's actually not that hard to compromise organisations and bring them to their knees like this, and organisations are not paying enough attention to A, their technology, and B, their people. 85% of breaches, it's a human error.
It's amazing that so many people pay up. I'm surprised by that. And when they pay up, does everything get fixed and turn back to normal, or do they clear off?
Not at all. So if you think about a criminal, they say they're going to give you your information back. They've got a digital copy of it. So then they go and sell it to another group. It's available on the dark web, or they will not actually respond. You just pay the ransom and you'll never hear from them again. So yes, in some cases the ransoms do work. However, what they do is they drive crime, and it's an exponential problem now because there's too many people paying it. So this is easy money.
How long does it take? Is it something that they can do very quickly, or is it a long process to actually get into the nuts and bolts of a company's systems?
Well, typical ransomware or advanced persistent threats, they follow a structured pattern. They like to do it quite low and slow, as we call it, because they don't want to be picked up and they don't want to be identified, and they want to get to their target. So typically they'll do it over a period of days, weeks or months, and this is why it's important for organisations to train their staff so their staff can recognise the telltale signs of these intruders in the network and stop them before it becomes a critical problem.
So could it be just a normal member of an organisation getting an email? Is it as simple as that and allowing them in, or is it more sophisticated?
It is in some cases as simple as that, and from that perspective they've got to make sure the organisations are testing their security controls, as they're called, and making sure that if somebody was to compromise the CEO's laptop, where could they get to, and make sure that they have adequate protections in place to make sure they can't get far, or they've got monitoring in place to pick up on that activity so they can stop it in its tracks.
But the hackers always seem to be one step ahead.
Unfortunately, it's far too easy. There's just not enough attention. Globally, we see these headlines. The Security and Exchange Commission are about to introduce regulations in the US for global companies, whereby they're going to have to mandatorily disclose breaches, because 85% of breaches actually don't reach the public.
Where do we stand in the UK? Are we pretty good at stopping this sort of thing?
I think the UK and sort of countries like the UK and our allies are more sophisticated in their cybersecurity practices than some of the emerging nations, but we've got a long way to go. And as I said, there's been a massive underinvestment in cybersecurity in UK critical infrastructure, and that's why in the case of SimSpace, we're actually working with governments and their intelligence agencies to bring military-grade capabilities to the private sector so that they can thwart these actors.
Yeah, and you talk about intelligence agencies there. Presumably they're trying to find out who these guys are, where they're operating from, and trying to get to them. But as you say, only one of them's been arrested so far.
Well, the good news is that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and the governments and the intelligence agencies across the world know a lot more about these groups than they think, and they think they can obfuscate their sort of activity behind things like Bitcoin and so forth, and they can't be tracked. They are being tracked, and don't worry, there's more of them that are known than they think.
OK, that's good to hear. Even if we can't send parcels abroad with the Royal Mail right now, at least we're on their case. Great to speak to you. Thank you very much for coming in. Ross Brewer, cybersecurity expert with SimSpace. Good to see you. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Jonathan.